The blue waters of Ethros Prime sparkled under the twin suns for what might be the last time. Admiral Kethvar pressed his webbed hands against the crystal viewing port of the orbital defense station. Below him, the beautiful aquatic cities of his people were being evacuated ship by ship. Each transport that lifted off carried thousands of Zephyrians away from their homeworld, but there were still millions more waiting. The Vex had already taken everything else. 12 star systems, hundreds of worlds, billions of lives. The insectoid swarm moved through space like a plague, consuming every living thing they touched. They stripped planets bare, leaving behind nothing but dead rock and empty space. Now they had come for Ethros Prime, the last stronghold of the Zephyrian Empire. "Admiral, the defense fleet is ready," reported Commander Yelmoth from his station. The young officer's gills fluttered with barely controlled fear. Like everyone else, he knew this was their final battle. Kethvar nodded slowly. Through the viewing port, he could see the last of his mighty fleet. 50 ships remained from what had once been thousands. The elegant vessels hung in space like living jewels, their crystal hulls catching the starlight. Each ship was a work of art built by master craftsmen over decades. Their energy shields glowed with soft blue light, and their plasma cannons were charged and ready. But the Admiral knew it would not be enough. It had never been enough. "Sir, long-range sensors are picking up hyperspace signatures," called out the sensor operator. Her voice cracked with terror. "They're coming." The space around Ethros Prime began to ripple and tear. Dark holes opened in the fabric of reality itself, and from those holes came nightmares. The Vex bioships emerged like living cancer, their brown and black hulls pulsing with veins of sickly yellow light. They looked more like giant insects than spacecraft, with segmented bodies and twitching appendages that seemed to taste the vacuum of space. The smaller ships came first, fighters the size of buildings, their wings buzzing with nervous energy. Behind them came the cruisers, massive beetle-like creatures with glowing eyes and snapping mandibles. And behind those came the capital ships, biovessels so large they cast shadows across the planet below. "Mother of the depths," whispered Commander Yelmoth. "There are so many." Admiral Kethvar had fought the Vex before. He had seen entire fleets consumed by these creatures, but seeing them here at his homeworld still made his blood run cold. The bioships moved in perfect coordination, like parts of a single vast organism, because that's exactly what they were. "All ships, this is Admiral Kethvar." He spoke into his communication device. "Today we make our final stand. We fight not for victory, but for time. Every minute we hold them back means more of our people escape to safety. Fight with honor. Fight with courage. Fight for Ethros Prime." The Zephyrian fleet moved forward to meet the swarm. Captain Veltara commanded the dreadnought Starfall, the largest and most powerful ship in the fleet. Her crew of 500 warriors prepared their weapons as the enemy approached. "Target the lead biocruiser," she ordered. "All plasma batteries fire at will." Brilliant blue beams lanced out from the Zephyrian ships. The plasma weapons had been designed to cut through the toughest armor in the galaxy. They struck the bioships and burned through their living hulls, causing green blood to spray into space. But for every enemy ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. The Vex returned fire with bioplasma weapons of their own, organs that spat corrosive acid across the void. The Zephyrian shields held at first, but the relentless barrage began to wear them down. One by one, the beautiful crystal ships began to crack and shatter. On the orbital station, Admiral Kethvar watched his fleet die. The Starfall was surrounded by enemy fighters, its shields failing under the constant attack. 3 destroyers had already been consumed by the larger bioships, their crews digested alive to feed the swarm. "Admiral, we have evacuation ships requesting immediate departure," reported the communications officer. "The civilian transports are loaded and ready." "Grant them permission," Kethvar said without taking his eyes off the battle. "Get our people away from here." The transport ships began to lift off from the planet's surface, their engines glowing blue as they climbed towards space. But the Admiral knew most would never make it. The Vex were already moving to intercept them, their fighter organisms peeling away from the main battle to hunt the fleeing civilians. Captain Veltara saw the same thing. Without hesitation, she turned the Starfall toward the approaching fighters. "All weapons, protect those transports," she commanded. Ramming speed. The massive dreadnought plowed into the swarm of biofighters, its remaining plasma cannons firing in all directions. Dozens of enemy organisms burst apart under the assault, but it was not enough. The Starfall's hull began to crack as acid ate through its crystal structure. The ship was dying, and Captain Veltara knew it. All hands abandon ship, she ordered. But there was nowhere to go. The escape pods would only delay the inevitable. Admiral Cathvar closed his eyes as he watched the pride of his fleet consumed by the living nightmare that was the Vex swarm. In a few more hours, maybe less, Ethros Prime would fall. The evacuation ships would be hunted down and destroyed. The last of his people would be digested by these monsters, and the Zephyrian Empire would exist only in memory. Sir, the sensor operator's voice was filled with confusion rather than fear. I'm reading something on long-range sensors. A massive energy signature approaching from the outer system. The Admiral opened his eyes. Explain. It's moving through what looks like a controlled rift in space-time. The energy readings are off the charts. I've never seen anything like it. On her dying ship, Captain Veltara received the same report from her sensor officer. Captain, something's coming. Something big. Through the chaos of the battle, through the screams of dying ships and the terrible silence of the consumed, a new presence made itself known. It moved through space like a predator, fast and purposeful. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the databases of any known species. Admiral Cathvar stared at his displays in amazement. Whatever was coming moved with such speed and power that it bent space around itself. It was heading straight for the battle, straight for the swarm that had destroyed his empire. What are you? He whispered to the approaching unknown. The answer would change everything. The darkness between stars rippled and tore open like a wound in reality itself. From that wound emerged something the galaxy had never seen before. A ship built not for beauty or elegance, but for one purpose only. War. The UES Retribution burst from its quantum tunnel like an angry god. The human warship stretched over 1 kilometer in length, its hull a mixture of dark gray metal and glowing energy conduits. Where other species built ships that looked like art, humans had built something that looked like a weapon. Every surface bristled with gun turrets, missile pods, and energy projectors. It was ugly, brutal, and absolutely terrifying. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, his weathered face lit by the glow of tactical displays. At 45 years old, he had fought in more battles than most people could imagine. His brown hair was streaked with gray, and his green eyes held the hard look of a man who had seen too much death. But those same eyes burned with determination. Sir, we're clear of the quantum tunnel, reported navigator Lisa Kane from her station. The young woman had bright red hair and quick fingers that danced across her control panels. All systems showing green. We're in the Ethros system, just like intelligence said we'd be. Morrison nodded. 3 months ago, the Vex swarm had hit the human colony of New Terra. 20 million people had died before the evacuation ships could escape. Since then, the Retribution had been hunting the creatures across half the galaxy, following their trail of destruction. The ship was humanity's newest weapon, a prototype warship equipped with experimental technology that pushed the boundaries of known science. Weapons Officer Tony Rodriguez looked up from his console. The dark-haired man had served with Morrison for 5 years, and his hands never shook no matter how intense the battle became. Captain, all weapon systems are online and ready. Quantum torpedoes loaded, railguns charged, and the Ares system is standing by. Ares, the autonomous response and engagement system, was the ship's artificial intelligence. It could process tactical information faster than any human brain and coordinate the ship's weapons with deadly precision. Other species relied on intuition and tradition in battle. Humans relied on cold, calculating efficiency. Chief Engineer Amy Stone called out from the engineering station. Quantum cores are running at optimal parameters, Captain. We've got all the power you need. Amy was small and thin, but she knew every bolt and wire on the ship. Her brown eyes were already scanning readouts, preparing for the massive power demands of combat. Sir, I'm detecting a massive battle in progress, reported Lisa Kane. Her voice was tight with concentration as she studied her sensors. Biosignatures match the Vex patterns from New Terra, but there's another species involved. Looks like they're getting slaughtered. Morrison's jaw tightened. He had seen what the Vex did to their victims. They didn't just kill, they consumed everything, turning living beings into fuel for their endless hunger. Put it on screen. The main display showed a scene of devastation. Elegant crystal ships fought desperately against a swarm of biovessels that moved like living insects. The alien fleet was clearly losing, their beautiful ships cracking under the relentless assault of acid and claw. Bio readings confirm it, sir, Tony Rodriguez said grimly. Those are definitely Vex. Looks like they found another species to consume. Morrison watched an alien dreadnought ram itself into a cluster of enemy fighters, sacrificing itself to protect fleeing civilian ships. These unknown beings were fighting with the same desperate courage he had seen from human defenders at New Terra. They were dying to protect their own people. Captain, should we contact them? Asked Communications Officer Danny Walsh from his station. The young man was new to the crew, but he had already proven himself reliable under fire. Later, Morrison said. Right now, they need help more than they need talk. Amy, I want maximum power to all systems. Lisa, plot an intercept course that puts us right in the middle of that swarm. Tony, prepare for immediate engagement. Sir, are you sure about this? Lisa Kane asked. We're outnumbered at least 50-1. Morrison smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Lisa, those bugs made a mistake when they hit New Terra. They think all species fight like the ones they've been eating. Careful, elegant, following rules. They don't know about humans yet. The Retribution accelerated toward the battle at incredible speed. Its quantum drives bent space around the ship, allowing it to move faster than should have been possible. The vessel's adaptive armor began to shift and change, preparing for combat. Weapon systems came online with lethal efficiency. Contact in 30 seconds, reported Lisa Kane. The aliens have noticed us. I'm reading massive energy spikes from their ships. They're trying to scan us. Let them look, Morrison said. Tony, target the largest bioship you can find. I want our first shot to get their attention. Quantum torpedoes locked on target, sir. A big ugly cruiser that looks like a beetle with anger issues. Fire. The Retribution's first shot lit up space like a newborn star. The quantum torpedo struck the Vex biocruiser, and didn't just destroy it, it unmade it, breaking down the creature's living matter at the molecular level. Where there had been a massive predator, there was suddenly nothing but expanding gas and debris. The effect on both fleets was immediate. The surviving aliens stopped their retreat and stared in amazement. The Vex swarm recoiled like a living thing that had been slapped. These creatures had consumed dozens of species, absorbed their technology and knowledge. But they had never seen a weapon that could simply erase one of their bioships from existence. Morrison allowed himself a grim smile. That got their attention. All weapons, free fire. Show these bugs what human engineering looks like. The Retribution plowed into the Vex formation like a knife through soft flesh. Its railguns spat streams of hypervelocity projectiles that punched through bioarmor like it was tissue paper. Energy weapons designed to disrupt organic matter tore through living hulls. Missile pods launched clusters of smart warheads that hunted down enemy fighters with mechanical precision. But the most shocking thing was the ship's tactics. Where other species fought with grace and elegance, the humans fought like a bar brawler. The Retribution rammed enemy vessels, used its own exhaust as a weapon, and employed strategies that seemed insane but were devastatingly effective. Captain Veltara, still alive on her dying ship, watched in amazement as the human vessel tore through the swarm. What manner of beings are these? She whispered. Admiral Kethvar was asking the same question as he watched the impossible rescue unfold. The unknown ship fought with a brutality and efficiency that defied everything he knew about space combat. And most remarkably, it was winning. Sir, the unknown vessel is broadcasting on all frequencies, reported his communications officer. Morrison's voice filled the Zephyrian command center, speaking in accented but understandable galactic standard. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human starship Retribution. To all friendly vessels, we're here to help. Pull back and let us handle the bugs. Admiral Kethvar found his voice. Human vessel, you are greatly outnumbered. Our thanks for your courage, but you should escape while you can. Morrison's reply was filled with dark humor. Admiral, with respect, you haven't seen humans fight before. We specialize in bad odds. The Retribution continued its deadly dance through the Vex formation, leaving destruction in its wake. For the first time in years, Admiral Kethvar felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. The battle became a whirlwind of fire and death as the Retribution carved through the Vex swarm like a blade through flesh. Human weapons proved devastatingly effective against the bioships. Where Zephyrian plasma had burned and cut, human quantum weapons simply erased their targets from existence. The railguns punched holes clean through the largest biocruisers, while energy beams designed specifically to disrupt organic matter turned living hulls into floating debris. Commander Ben Harper sat in the cockpit of his fighter, waiting for the launch order. Around him in the Retribution's hangar bay, 35 other pilots prepared their craft for combat. Unlike the sleek, specialized fighters of other species, human interceptors were built like flying tanks. They carried enough armor to survive multiple hits and enough weapons to destroy targets twice their size. "Gold Squadron, this is Harper." He spoke into his radio. "We're launching in 30 seconds. Remember your training. These bugs think in patterns, but we don't. Use that against them." Harper had been flying fighters for 12 years, ever since he was 18. He had fought pirates, rebels, and alien raiders. But the Vex were different. They weren't just enemies, they were a plague that consumed everything in their path. Today he intended to show them what human pilots could do. "Launch fighters," came Captain Morrison's voice over the intercom. The hangar bay doors opened, and Gold Squadron shot into space like bullets from a gun. Harper led his fighters in a wide loop around the Retribution, then dove straight into the thickest part of the Vex formation. The enemy biofighters moved to intercept them, their insect-like forms buzzing with nervous energy. "Gold 2, this is Brooks," called out pilot Kelly Brooks over the radio. "I count 20 bogies coming in fast." "Copy that, Brooks," Harper replied. "Remember, they expect us to run. Let's disappoint them." The human fighters did something the Vex had never seen before. They stopped. In the middle of space, with enemy fighters bearing down on them, Gold Squadron killed their forward momentum and spun to face their attackers. The maneuver should have been suicide. Instead, it gave the humans perfect firing positions as the biofighters overshot their targets. Harper's fighter erupted in weapon fire. Twin railguns spat streams of metal slugs while his missile pods launched smart warheads. Around him, the rest of Gold Squadron did the same. The Vex fighters found themselves caught in a crossfire, their formation shredded by the unexpected tactic. "Brooks, you've got 3 on your tail," Harper called out. "I see them," Kelly Brooks replied. Her fighter suddenly reverse thrust and spun backwards, firing at the pursuing biofighters while flying in reverse. It was a maneuver that would have killed most pilots, but Brooks made it look easy. 2 of the Vex creatures exploded under her guns before they could react. Lieutenant Ryan Cole found himself in trouble when his fighter took a hit from bioplasma. His right engine was dead and his weapons were offline. A massive Vex cruiser moved to finish him off, its mouth opening to reveal rows of acidic teeth. "This is Cole," he said calmly into his radio. "My bird's dead. Gonna ram the big ugly." "Negative, Cole," Harper ordered. "Eject and we'll pick you up." "No time, sir. Besides, I've got a better idea." Cole didn't ram the biocruiser. Instead, he used his dying fighter's exhaust as a weapon, directing the superheated plasma from his remaining engine right into the creature's neural cluster. The bioship convulsed and died, its massive form going limp in space. On the Retribution, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Nina Walsh coordinated rescue operations for the surviving Zephyrian crews. The human ship's medical bay was designed for humans, but she and her team worked frantically to adapt their equipment for aquatic aliens. "Get those Zephyrian survivors aboard," she ordered the landing bay crews. "I don't care if we have to flood half the ship. We're not leaving anyone behind." Dr. Walsh was a small woman with graying hair and gentle hands, but her voice carried absolute authority in medical matters. She had trained as both a doctor and a combat medic, and she had never lost a patient she could save. The first Zephyrian survivors came aboard in their environmental suits, their gills fluttering with shock and pain. Dr. Walsh took one look at their injuries and began barking orders to her medical team. "These burns are from bioacid," she said. "Start them on neutralizing agents and prep the surgical bay. And someone figure out how to flood that spare compartment. These people need water to breathe properly." Captain Veltara was among the survivors brought aboard. Her ship, the Starfall, had finally succumbed to the Vex assault, but her crew had managed to escape in the final moments. She found herself in the strange human vessel, surrounded by beings who risked their lives to save complete strangers. "Why?" she asked Dr. Walsh through a translator device. "Why do you help us? We are nothing to you." Dr. Walsh looked up from treating a wounded Zephyrian warrior. "Because it's the right thing to do," she said simply. "Because we're all in this together, whether we knew it before or not." On the bridge, Captain Morrison watched his tactical displays with grim satisfaction. The Retribution had destroyed nearly a third of the Vex formation, and his fighters were running wild through their ranks. But he knew this was just the beginning. "Sir, Long-range sensors are detecting massive hyperspace distortions, reported Lieutenant Sam Foster from the tactical station. The young officer's face was pale as he studied his readings. Whatever's coming through is huge, 10 times larger than anything we've seen so far. Morrison felt his blood run cold. He had hoped they were dealing with a normal Vex raiding force, but the energy signatures Foster was reading suggested something much worse. "How long until it arrives?" he asked. 15 minutes, sir. Maybe less. Morrison turned to his communications officer. "Danny, open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship." Admiral Kethvar's face appeared on the main screen. The alien commander looked exhausted but hopeful for the first time in months. "Admiral, we need to talk," Morrison said. "What do you know about Vex command structures?" "They are led by hive queens," Kethvar replied. "Massive bioships that coordinate the entire swarm. But the queens never come to battle themselves. They remain hidden while their children do the fighting." Morrison's expression darkened. "Well, that just changed. We've got something big incoming, and I'm betting it's your hive queen. How do we kill it?" "Captain Morrison, you don't understand," Kethvar said desperately. "Hive queens cannot be defeated. They are the size of moons protected by living armor kilometers thick. Our greatest fleets have tried and failed." Morrison studied the tactical display, watching the energy distortions grow stronger. Around the Retribution, his fighters continued to tear through the Vex swarm, but he knew that wouldn't matter if a hive queen arrived. "Admiral, has anyone ever tried attacking one from the inside?" Kethvar's gills fluttered with shock. "That would be suicide. Even if you could penetrate its defenses, you would be trapped inside a living nightmare." Morrison smiled grimly. "Admiral, you really don't know humans very well. We've made a career out of doing the impossible." The space around Ethros Prime began to ripple and tear as something vast forced its way through hyperspace. Morrison could feel it through the ship's sensors, a presence so massive and malevolent that it made his skin crawl. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's intercom. "Battle stations. We're about to face the big boss, and it's going to be ugly. But remember, we came here to kill bugs, and we're not leaving until the job is done." The darkness of space split open like a wound, and from that wound came humanity's greatest challenge yet. The Vex Hive Queen emerged from hyperspace like a living nightmare made manifest. The creature was the size of a small moon, its brown and black surface covered in miles of organic armor that pulsed with veins of sickly yellow light. Thousands of weapon ports dotted its surface, and massive tentacles writhed around its bulk, like the arms of some cosmic octopus. This was not just a ship. It was a living creature that had consumed the knowledge and technology of dozens of civilizations. Captain Morrison stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. The readings were almost beyond comprehension. The Hive Queen massed over 50 billion tons and carried enough bioweapons to sterilize an entire star system. Worse, it was accompanied by a fresh swarm that darkened space itself. Millions of smaller bioships that poured from openings in the Queen's hull like insects from a hive. "Dear God," whispered Navigator Lisa Kane. "How are we supposed to fight that thing?" Before Morrison could answer, the Hive Queen released a psychic scream that rolled across space like a tidal wave of pure terror. The Zephyrian survivors aboard the Retribution collapsed, clutching their heads in agony. Even the humans felt it, a crushing mental pressure that tried to paralyze them with despair. The remaining Zephyrian ships went silent, their crews overwhelmed by the Queen's psychic assault. Only the Retribution remained active, its crew protected by mental conditioning and sheer human stubbornness. "Communications. Get me Admiral Kethvar," Morrison ordered. The Zephyrian commander appeared on screen, his face twisted with pain but his eyes still alert. "Captain Morrison, you must flee. The Hive Queen has arrived." "There is no hope now." Morrison's jaw tightened. "Admiral, with all due respect, you haven't fought humans before. We specialize in impossible odds." He turned to his crew. "All hands, battle stations. We're going to do something really stupid." Chief Engineer Amy Stone looked up from her console with alarm. "Captain, my readings show that thing has living armor over 3 miles thick. Our quantum torpedoes might scratch the surface, but they'll never penetrate to anything vital. Then we'll have to get closer," Morrison said calmly. "Amy, I need you to push the quantum cores to 150% of rated capacity." "Sir, the cores won't hold at that level," Amy protested. "We'll have maybe 30 minutes before they overload." Morrison smiled grimly. They don't need to hold forever, Amy. Just long enough. The Hive Queen began to move toward Ethros Prime, its massive bulk blotting out the stars. Smaller bioships swarmed around it like antibodies, ready to destroy anything that came too close. The creature had fought and defeated the greatest fleets in the galaxy. It had consumed entire civilizations. Now it would add the Zephyrians and these strange humans to its collection. But the humans had other plans. Tony, I want you to target the largest weapon clusters on that thing, Morrison ordered. Start with the forward section and work your way back. Hers. Begin calculating firing solutions for a precision attack run. The ship's artificial intelligence responded immediately. Captain, analysis suggests that direct assault has a success probability of less than 1%. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Ares, override that recommendation, Morrison said. Sometimes you have to take the 1% chance. The Retribution accelerated toward the Hive Queen at maximum speed, its quantum drives pushing the ship beyond safe limits. Human fighters launched from the hangar bays, their pilots grimly determined to buy their ship the time it needed. Commander Ben Harper led Gold Squadron in a desperate attack on the enemy swarm. All fighters spread out and cause as much chaos as possible. Draw their fire away from the Retribution. The human pilots flew like madmen using tactics that defied all military logic. They rammed biofighters, used their own ship's exhaust as weapons, and coordinated attacks that seemed random but were devastatingly effective. Pilot Kelly Brooks managed to destroy an entire squadron of enemy fighters by luring them into the gravity well of a nearby asteroid. On the Retribution, Engineering Officer Matt Gibson worked frantically to keep the quantum cores from exploding. The massive engines were producing more power than they were designed for, and the ship's hull was beginning to vibrate from the stress. Amy, the containment fields are fluctuating, he called out. If these cores breach, they'll take half the ship with them. I know, Amy Stone replied, her hands flying over her controls. But the captain needs this power. Keep them stable for 20 more minutes. The Retribution opened fire on the Hive Queen with everything it had. Quantum torpedoes struck the creature's living armor and burned deep holes into its flesh. Railgun rounds punched through biomatter like bullets through paper. Energy weapons designed to disrupt organic tissue caused massive wounds to open across the Queen's surface. But it wasn't enough. The Hive Queen's wounds began to heal almost immediately, new flesh growing to replace what had been destroyed. The creature had evolved over millions of years to be the perfect predator. It could adapt to any weapon, survive any attack. Sir, we're barely scratching it, reported Tony Rodriguez. The damage we're causing is healing faster than we can inflict it. Morrison studied the tactical display, his mind racing. The Hive Queen was too large, too well protected, too adaptable to be destroyed from the outside. But maybe, Amy, how long would it take to rig our quantum cores to overload in a controlled fashion? Amy Stone's eyes widened. You're talking about turning our own ship into a bomb. That's insane. How long? Morrison repeated. 10 minutes, maybe 15. But Captain, we'd have to be inside that thing when they went off. There's no way to escape the blast radius. Morrison nodded slowly. He had known it would come to this. The only way to kill a Hive Queen was from the inside, where its armor couldn't protect it. It would be a suicide mission, but it might save the Zephyrians and stop the swarm from spreading further. All hands, this is the captain, he announced over the intercom. I'm going to attempt something that's never been tried before. We're going to ram that thing and detonate our quantum cores inside its hull. Anyone who wants to transfer to the escape pods has 5 minutes. The response was immediate and unanimous. Not a single crew member left their post. Dr. Nina Walsh's voice came over the intercom from the medical bay. Captain, the Zephyrian survivors want to know if they can help. They're willing to fight alongside us. Morrison felt a surge of pride in his chest. These people, humans and aliens, alike, were ready to die to stop the Vex. Tell them we're honored to have them with us. The Retribution began its final approach toward the Hive Queen. The massive creature's weapons opened fire, sending streams of bioplasma and acid across space. The human ship's shields flared and buckled under the assault, but Morrison kept the ship on course. Target acquired, Tony Rodriguez reported. I've found what looks like a ventilation port near the creature's midsection. If we can punch through there, do it, Morrison ordered. The Retribution's remaining quantum torpedoes blasted a hole in the Hive Queen's armor just large enough for the ship to fit through. Without hesitation, Morrison drove his vessel directly into the wound. penetrating deep into the creature's living interior. The ship found itself in a nightmare landscape of pulsing flesh and flowing biofluids. Organic conduits carried nutrients and information throughout the Queen's body, while defensive organisms moved to attack the intruder. "Amy, start the overload sequence," Morrison commanded. "Everyone else prepare for the fight of our lives. We're going to plant these charges and make sure this thing never hurts anyone again." The countdown began, 15 minutes until the quantum cores would explode and tear the Hive Queen apart from the inside. But first, they had to survive long enough to complete their mission. Inside the Hive Queen, the Retribution found itself trapped in a living hell. The ship's hull scraped against pulsing walls of organic matter as Captain Morrison navigated through arteries the size of subway tunnels. Bioluminescent veins provided sickly yellow light, and the air itself seemed thick with the smell of decay and alien life. "This is like being swallowed by a whale," muttered Navigator Lisa Kane as she tried to map their route through the creature's body. "A whale that wants to digest us," replied Tony Rodriguez, watching his weapons displays as defensive organisms moved to intercept them. The Hive Queen's immune system responded to the human intrusion like antibodies attacking a virus. Creatures the size of tanks scuttled through the organic corridors, their claws and acid weapons ready to destroy the invaders. But the humans had come prepared for this fight. "Marines, prepare for deployment," ordered Captain Morrison. Sergeant First Class Chris Adams checked his weapon one final time before leading his squad into the nightmare around them. The Marine was built like a bear, with broad shoulders and steady hands that never shook in combat. His squad of 12 had trained for boarding actions, but nothing could have prepared them for this. "Listen up, people," Adams called to his Marines. "We need to plant charges at key points throughout this thing's nervous system. Stay together, watch each other's backs, and remember, we're doing this so these bugs never hurt anyone again." Staff Sergeant Nicole Turner nodded grimly as she hefted her plasma rifle. The weapon was designed specifically for close-quarters combat against organic targets. Around her, the other Marines checked their gear one final time. The Marines deployed through the ship's airlocks into the Hive Queen's interior. They found themselves in corridors that pulsed like blood vessels, fighting creatures that seemed to be part of the ship itself. The defensive organisms were fast and deadly, but they had never faced human Marines before. Chris Adams led the charge down a main artery toward what their sensors indicated was a major nerve cluster. His squad moved in perfect formation, their weapons cutting down attacking creatures with mechanical precision. When one Marine's weapon jammed, another immediately covered for him. When Staff Sergeant Turner was knocked down by a creature's acid spray, 2 Marines pulled her to safety while the others kept firing. "This is Adams," he reported over the radio. "We've reached the first target. Planting charges now." The Marines worked frantically to attach quantum charges to the nerve cluster. The explosives were small but incredibly powerful, designed to disrupt the Hive Queen's nervous system and prevent it from coordinating its defenses. Meanwhile, Dr. Nina Walsh had transformed the ship's medical bay into a field hospital. The Zephyrian survivors worked alongside her human medical team, using their knowledge of biological systems to help target the creature's weak points. "These neural pathways carry sensory information," explained Captain Veltara, pointing to a display that showed the Queen's internal structure. "If you can sever them here and here, the creature will be partially blinded." Dr. Walsh nodded and relayed the information to the Marines. Even in the face of certain death, these people were working together to stop the Vex threat. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Amy Stone and her assistant Matt Gibson fought a desperate battle against time and physics. The quantum cores were running far beyond safe parameters, their containment fields flickering dangerously. "Amy, the primary containment field is at critical levels," Matt called out. "If it fails, we'll get our explosion ahead of schedule." "Keep it stable," Amy ordered, her hands flying over her controls. "We need 8 more minutes for the Marines to finish their job." The ship shuddered as something massive struck the hull. Through the viewing ports, they could see house-sized defensive organisms trying to tear the Retribution apart from the outside. The creature's immune system was fighting back with everything it had. On the bridge, Morrison watched his displays as his Marines fought their way through the Hive Queen's body. 3 charges had been planted successfully, but they needed at least 5 more to ensure the creature's destruction. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy buildup in the creature's forward sections," reported Lieutenant Sam Foster. I think it's preparing to fire its main weapon at the planet. Morrison's blood ran cold. If the Hive Queen used its primary bioweapon on Ethros Prime, it would kill every living thing on the surface in minutes. The evacuation ships were still in orbit, loaded with millions of Zephyrian civilians. Adams, report, Morrison called over the radio. Sir, we've got charges on 5 of the 7 target points, but these last 2 are heavily defended. It's going to take time we don't have. Morrison made a decision that would haunt him forever. All Marines fall back to the ship. We're detonating what we have. Sir, 5 charges might not be enough to kill this thing, Adams protested. It's better than letting it murder millions of innocents. Get your people back here now. The Marines began their fighting retreat through the organic corridors, carrying their wounded and covering each other's withdrawal. Staff Sergeant Turner had taken a bad hit from acid spray, but she refused to slow down the others. Go, 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 shouted Chris Adams as his squad reached the ship's airlocks. Everyone aboard! As the last Marine came aboard, Amy Stone called out from engineering. Captain, the cores are going critical. We've got maybe 60 seconds before they breach. Morrison realized they had. One final problem: the quantum cores were designed to overload in a specific pattern that would maximize damage to the Hive Queen's nervous system. But the ship needed to be in exactly the right position when they detonated. Lisa, can you get us to the creature's brainstem? He asked. Sir, we'd have to navigate through 3 miles of hostile tissue in less than a minute. It's impossible. Morrison smiled grimly. Lisa, you've been flying with humans too long. We don't believe in impossible. The Retribution began its desperate race through the Hive Queen's body, dodging defensive organisms and crashing through biological barriers. The ship's hull screamed under the stress, but Lisa Kane's piloting kept them on course. 30 seconds to detonation, Amy called out. Target in sight, Lisa reported. The creature's main brain cluster is dead ahead. Morrison watched the countdown timer tick toward 0. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency even in the face of certain death. Human and Zephyrian survivors stood together on the bridge, united in their determination to stop the Vex threat. 10 seconds, Amy announced. It's been an honor serving with you all, Morrison said quietly. The quantum cores reached critical mass and exploded in a burst of pure energy that tore through the Hive Queen's nervous system like lightning. The massive creature convulsed as its brain was destroyed. Its psychic scream cut off in mid-thought. The explosion spread through the Queen's body, severing nerve connections and disrupting vital functions. But somehow, impossibly, the Retribution survived. The ship's experimental armor held just long enough for the crew to escape through a breach in the dying creature's hull. They emerged into open space just as the Hive Queen collapsed in on itself, its massive form going dark and lifeless. The remaining Vex bioships, suddenly cut off from their Queen's controlling influence, scattered in confusion. Without coordination, they were easy targets for the recovering Zephyrian fleet. Within hours, the last of the swarm was destroyed. Admiral Kethvar contacted the battered human ship as it limped away from the dying Hive Queen. Captain Morrison, your species has given us something we thought lost forever: hope. The Zephyrian Empire will remember this debt for all time. Morrison looked around his damaged bridge at his exhausted crew. They had done the impossible. They had killed a Hive Queen and saved an entire species from extinction, but more importantly, they had proven that when faced with overwhelming evil, good people could still make a difference. Admiral, it was our honor, Morrison replied. And remember, you're not alone in this galaxy anymore. Humanity stands with those who fight against the darkness. Dr. Nina Walsh finished treating the last of the wounded and joined Morrison on the bridge. Captain, what happens now? Morrison studied the star charts, thinking about the vast galaxy that stretched out before them. Somewhere out there, other species were fighting their own battles against creatures like the Vex. Other civilizations needed help from those willing to stand and fight. Now we go home and tell Command what we've learned, he said. The galaxy is a dangerous place, but it's also full of good people worth protecting. And I have a feeling they're going to need us again soon. Navigator Lisa Kane plotted a course back to human space. Ready for jump to hyperspace, sir? Morrison nodded. Take us home, Lisa. We've got work to do. The Retribution disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a saved world and the promise that humanity would stand against the darkness, no matter the odds. In the depths of space, other threats stirred and plotted, but they would find that the galaxy had changed. Humanity had arrived, and they brought with them something that had been missing for too long: hope.